Okay, welcome to the next episode of the World Cup series. Today, we're going to be talking about Egypt. And with that, I'm going to bring on my guest, Ahmed. And Ahmed is going to be telling us about a little bit, firstly, as always, a bit about Egypt and some of the background about Egypt. And then we'll talk about Egypt's World Cup chances and their odds in the World Cup. And then we'll take it from there. So, welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you, Yusuf, for having me. And I really appreciate this, opportunity and to be on your show because I'm a huge football fan. Football is, almost life to me, as it is for many people in Egypt. I don't think a lot of people, know how much, football is to millions of people in Egypt. It's almost comparable to Brazil and Argentina and the effect it has on people and giving them hope, bringing them together. Um, and that is why the World Cup is a huge thing in general for all Egyptians, especially that we don't show up often. As a lot of people probably know, so Egypt is in Africa. It's one of the largest countries in Africa. It's also one of the oldest countries, in general civilization. And Egypt is probably well known for its rich history, with the pyramids and the pharaohs, but also Egypt has a much more diverse culture and history. Um, so I'm from Alexandria, which is a city, it's overlooking the Mediterranean. It's named after Alexander the Great. Has a very rich history as well with the Alexandria Library, with the Alexandria Lighthouse, which is one of the wonders of the world. And then Egypt also has a lot of diversity in it, among different regions, and no matter where you go, you're going to find that people are very welcoming, people are very warm, and people also really love football over there.
That's a great. That kind of gets us still go our main content here of what we want to discuss about the football of the Egypt chances of the World Cup. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of touch in to mention that I think everywhere, because most fans in I guess Europe would think that football is really big just in Europe. When I was speaking to Murat earlier about Turkey, and he mentioned almost the exact same thing, very passionate, where the fans would rather, if they have money, they'll go watch the game versus spending on other priorities. So, we kind of see that bridge now where obviously Turkey's kind of, Turkey is in a bridge between Europe and Asia, but Egypt is in Africa and it's all kind of part of that part of the world. And it's good to see that the game and the beautiful game is getting much traction. So let's just start. Tell us a little bit about the Egyptian team, the players, the positions, and yeah. So just give us an intro about that.
Yeah, so I want to first start by saying that Egypt is a unique team in the fact that it is the most dominant team, in the history of African football. It's won the most AFCON, 7 AFCONs, and reached several other finals. Same for club level football. It is dominated by Egyptian teams. So Egypt is kind of the undisputed, king of Africa when it comes to football in general. But the unique thing is, which is the unfortunate part, is also it is one of the most underperforming African teams ever in the history of the World Cup. And this is a very strange, paradox where you have arguably, one of the strongest, if not the strongest African team, over history and excellent, amazing heritage. And at the same time, we don't usually reach the World Cup. And when we do, we really underperform. So this is when we're hoping that this time might be a little bit different. And our team, I would say that people who are familiar with African football in general, Egypt had the golden generation, arguably again Africa's best ever team between 2006 and 2010, won 3 AFCONs in a row, and very unfortunately they did not make it to the 2010 World Cup. And Arguably, if they had, they probably would have had a very deep run there. Um, and essentially, this is a heartbreak that I think myself and a lot of Egyptians won't get over. That this Egyptian team, in especially, did not reach the World Cup 2010. And those, maybe few years afterwards, a good 7, 8 years, Egyptian football never really recovered. And ironically, this is the time where one of also arguably Africa's best ever players was coming to, coming to fruition, essentially, Mohamed Salah. And you would see like this icon playing in one of with Egypt's one of Egypt's worst generations ever was unfortunate for him as well. And then, despite that, and because of, again, Egypt's football heritage, they were able to make it to the AFCON final in 2017, despite not qualifying to the three AFCONs before that in the aftermath of the revolution. This is, again, speaks of the Egyptian, football mentality, is that they dominate Africa. They have this winning mentality when it comes to Africa. And then this generation, even though it was really, one of, it was very underwhelming, except for Salah, they managed to qualify to the World Cup in 2018. And the World Cup in its old format, when it was 32 teams, it was generally very hard for African teams in general to qualify. Only 5 teams out of 55, including about 10 to 11 teams that you would consider, powerhouses, and any of them could easily play in the World Cup. And so a lot of times it would come to luck, to unfortunate draw, and Egypt, I would say, was also very unlucky with its World Cup, draws and groups, World Cup qualifiers in general. But when they reached 2018 World Cup, there was this, hysteria that, yeah, we're finally there, we finally made it, first time since 1990, and the team was horrible afterwards. In the World Cup they were. And also, if you remember 2018 Champions League final, when Salah was injured by Ramos, I mean, since you're a Liverpool fan, and his shoulder injury, and he wasn't fit for the World Cup, and he played 2 games, and he scored 2 goals in the World Cup, which is a huge deal, honestly, for Egypt, but still. It was enough. We lost 3 games, including a game against Saudi Arabia, which was also very unfortunate. Um, but I'm trying to lead to that there have been a lot of heartbreaks, leading up to this World Cup, including the 2022 qualifiers as well. 2022 team was, deserved to win the World Cup, but we had to face Senegal in a playoff game. This is how hard it is to qualify, from Africa. You're playing Senegal, and one of you will reach the World Cup, and it was settled by penalties. We beat them 1-0 in Egypt, and they beat us 1-0 in Senegal, and we played by penalties and lost by penalties. So that was also very unfortunate. So now with the new format, it was obviously easier to qualify. And I would say that Egypt right now has its best team in a decade, if not more. Okay. It's definitely not at the level of the golden generation, of 26 to 2006 to 2010, but we're definitely up there. Okay. And this partly has to do with the attacking power. So Salah, yes, he's older, and as you know, he's had his probably worst season ever in his career. And he doesn't seem as hungry as you would want him to be. Even with Egypt, even the last AFCON, he lost his, thunder. This is not, Salah of 2018. I'm not only talking about his stats or goals, or even Salah of last year. He doesn't seem as motivated to give everything he's got, which again is unfortunate. But then you've also got Marmoush, which he plays for Man City, and he is a lethal attacker. Um, Unfortunately, he's not getting much playing time at Man City. It has to do with Pep Guardiola, the game plan, likes of Erling Haaland, and then buying Semenyo and Ryan Cherki at the same time. So it's hard to find your way into that squad. But when he does, I think he capitalizes on that, and he shines. But Marmoush, the season before that, he was the best player in the Bundesliga. Before Harry Kane made it to Bayern München, but he was, the goal scorer at Frankfurt. He was again on fire. That's why Man City bought him. But he's very well, his top level. He's a world class, attacker, and he's lethal and can hurt any team he plays against. Um, so to have those two together with other, players as well around them who are also, I think are very decent. So you've got Mahmoud Trezeguet, who plays for Al Ahly now, but he played, for years in Aston Villa, and he played in Turkey, and he's a really good winger. And you've got also other skillful wingers. You've got Haytham Hassan, his Egyptian and his Spanish, and the only convinced him to join the national team this year. He doesn't speak Arabic, and that's we usually don't bring dual citizens, unlike Morocco or Algeria, but we started to go that route, and he plays in La Liga, and he's a very also skillful winger. And you've got other players as well up front, like Ibrahim Adel, who is also, he can be, a menace to any team he's playing against, and he's playing in Denmark now, but he could definitely go places. And I think a player that is also a big wild card, in midfield and in attacking, is Imam Ashur. So he plays for Al Ahly. He is arguably, I think easily he's the best player on the squad. With Salah and Marmoush and everybody. The His potential is huge. He can play easily any Premier League team. The only problem is his mentality. He is not disciplined. He's one of those players. He's just so talented. But if he's in form and if he's focused, he can be a problem too. So seeing all those names, together in one team, and then also under this coach, and I can talk about Hosam Hassan a little bit. I think things could be a little bit different. And I know you're probably going to go through Egypt's chances, and this will have to do with the group as well.
No, before that, I wanted to, like you mentioned, a lot of the attacking options.
Yes.
Did you want to hear about the defense? Because obviously there's a big part there.
Yes.
And then also on the attacking option is the player that recently signed for Barcelona. He made the team as well.
Yes. So let's talk about him first. So Hamza Abdel Karim, he's 17, okay, and he never played. He only played for under 19. Okay, he never played in the first team. But at the same time, Barcelona, La Masia, the academy itself, they bought him from Al Ahly because they could see the potential. He's 193 centimeters, and he's a classic striker. Like, he's a classic number 9, and those are becoming rare, those days. So it was a bit of a surprise for him to be, joining the team for the World Cup, and I think part of it was that it's good to have him get used to what it means to play for the national team, what it means to meet the World Cup, to spend a few weeks with Salah, with Marmoush, to because he arguably would be the next star, and play in Barcelona itself, who just signed him, like you said. Okay.
One thing is that I know, like, for example, England did it a few times, is that they usually what they call a wild card player, and they bring these players in who are obviously much younger, but they bring him in more for the experience and to kind of, it's almost like handing over or changing of the guards, as they would say, where he could learn from that experience of seeing the likes of Salah, seeing the likes of Marmoush, seeing how they prep and how they focus for that. I did actually want to kind of push back, is that one thing is that there is a lot of about Salah's motivation and stuff like that, but there's one thing, he always has had a discipline of being prepared, and one of the points for that is that if you look at when the season ends, most players, they go on holiday and have a good time, and they come back a little bit, a few pounds overweight. One thing about Salah, he's always come back, in top condition. So whilst he may not have the same, because as you all get older, you have different priorities in life, right? So when you're younger and you're single and you don't have any family and stuff like that, there's a different drive and motivation than when someone has a family and different outlook on life. So I do want to kind of just put that out there for Salah. Yeah. And then, if we come back to the defense.
Yeah, the defense, yes. Yeah, and yes, so one thing about Hamza, yeah, I agree completely. And Brazil have done it with Ronaldo phenomenon in '94. They done it with Kaká in 2002. I fully agree with the principle. The only thing is he's your only striker. He's your only number nine. You didn't.
Okay.
So that's the problem. It's like, is he actually going to play? But the gameplay now doesn't depend on a number nine. He doesn't play with a classic striker, but you also need to have that option, in the World Cup, depending on the game. So that's I guess, the criticism for that choice. But I'm all for him being there, just not the only, attack, and not the only striker there. Defense, well, defense is an issue partly because the best, I think, defender in Egypt's history, his name is Mohamed Abdel. That's him wearing his T-shirt. Okay. Um, he is there's nothing like him. I've watched Egyptian football all my life. He's the best defender I've ever seen. He unfortunately had an ACL injury a year ago and never fully recovered. He's been out for 9 months. He plays in France in Nice. He used to be with Al Ahly, and he hasn't really played a single game since the injury, except with Egypt last week against Russia, and then played the second half against Brazil. And with him absent, or maybe not in top form, the defense is really not as solid. Although I have to say, at AFCON they surprised me. The defense was really cohesive and was really good, but you don't have those this people of the caliber of Muhammad Abdel. I think the issue is also our right back, Muhammad Hani. There, his I would say he's average at best. He has good days, and there's no good substitute. And whenever we think of him playing against Jeremy Doku on game one, it really worries us all.
Yeah.
And then the left back is actually an amazing footballer. He's so skillful, but again, same thing, mentality. It's hard to say. You don't know what to expect of him. But again, if he's in top form, he is. I would say one of the best five left backs in the world that day.
Oh,
And then
wow. Okay.
yes, yes,
So it's very interesting because, especially because you're talking about the right back position going up against Jeremy Doku, and we know Jeremy Doku recently in the Premiership League, at least he's finding how to score. Because prior to that was very good dribbles, very good carrying, but his end product wasn't there. So that's going to be very interesting to see how he lines up against the right back there, and then the challenges there. Also, Belgium as a whole, I see them again a bit of in a transition because before they were kind of like De Bruyne's team, but now he's getting on a bit as well. So
oh,
it is going to be a very interesting game for sure. Actually, let's just talk about the game. What do you think is going to be the outlook of that game? Because as we mentioned, both of them seem to be teams in transition, or
yeah.
from older to young generation. What's your outlook, and what do you think is going to happen in that game?
Yeah, I would say a few months back, I was optimistic about the specific game. After AFCON, we played very well, reached the semifinal, and at the same time, Belgium was really nowhere to be seen. I looked at, their after the World Cup draw, I looked at the results, of their qualifiers. I wasn't impressed at all, including their friendly games. And then recently, they played the US. They beat them 5-2, and they were dominating. And I watched the game, and I started to get worried, and then Jeremy Doku and his form, and then most recently they played Tunisia. They crushed them 5-0. And Tunisia is, not very far. Yes, we're better, but not that much better. So,
Yeah,
so I was a little bit concerned, and at the same time, when we played against Brazil, we lost 2-1. It was okay, but there were no signs that there was no the performance wasn't reassuring to me that we have a good chance against Belgium. Um, I think also, Belgium is, yes, it's a change of guards and everything, but and it's it's an like a newer generation, but I think they still have a lot of people from the good team. Courtois, top form. De Bruyne and the friendlies is actually very impressive, and Doku and others, and Tillemans. It's a good team, and Trossard. Like they've got people, and Lukaku now is back, and he started scoring. He scored against Croatia in a friendly. So it seems that they're kind of their curve is they're on the rise. So that worries me a little bit. I think we might lose the game. I don't think it will be, by a lot. I don't think it will take a beating. But also, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we come up with a draw. I would be surprised if we win. Anything's possible. And I'm gonna be at the game. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be in Seattle. Um, so we'll see. But if I'm to expect and hope, maybe a draw. But it would probably be a goalless draw. I don't think we're gonna score.
So one thing I will say that Seattle, obviously being in the Pacific Northwest, the temperature is going to be not as extreme as if it was in the South, like in Florida or something,
Yeah.
because LA and Dallas, those stadiums are kind of air conditioned, they're indoors, so you don't really have to worry about the temperature. And Seattle, if it's hot, that's where Egypt can have an advantage because the temperature in the World Cup is definitely going to have a factor. And if there's any games in Mexico, I don't think you have any games.
No, not in Mexico.
So, but if you in the knockout phases, if there are any games in Mexico, that's going to be a huge factor because the weather is definitely going to be favoring the African teams over the European teams. One country I did want to talk about in Africa is Morocco because obviously they are officially the African champions after the longest VAR or after review of 2 months of waiting. Out of nowhere, they became declared the champion. But also, Senegal is also a very good team. And as you mentioned before, generally when I look at Africa right now, the teams that's representing Ivory Coast, Morocco, Senegal, and the teams that's representing, a lot of them are not pushovers. So it's not like any country is playing, they're going to be pushovers. And I believe the same with Egypt as well, because if Belgium thinks that they're going to be Egypt's going to be pushover, anything can happen in football. So let's focus on the winners of the AFCON. Let's say the both won, right? Morocco and Senegal. What's your take on those teams? And what do you think their chances are in the World Cup? Because I personally believe Morocco is going to go far. But yeah, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people, think too highly of Morocco. I think that Morocco is. I truly do. I think yes, they are an excellent team. Don't get me wrong. I think they will definitely qualify from their group. But there are people who start talking that that Morocco are the favorites to win the group that has Brazil in it. I think that's taking it too far. Yes, they can. Anything's possible in the World Cup. But no, they won't. I don't think so. But I think yes, they can definitely beat Scotland. Of course, they're going to beat Haiti. I think whatever happens next is up to. It will depend on who they will face. I honestly don't remember their bracket when they're second, second in the group who they're going to face. But I don't think they can just beat any team. I think that how far they'll go really depends on who they're going to face in round of 32 and the round of 16. But yes, they will qualify.
Because I spoke to a fan from Brazil, and they were saying that they're also from their preparation for the World Cup, they're a bit apprehensive because it's the first time Brazil had a non-Brazilian coach, so Carlo Ancelotti. So they're kind of really relying upon him on his name and what he did at Real Madrid and how he's able to bring the stars together. Yeah. And right now, their team is also in transition where they don't have a classic number 10 anymore. They don't have the Rivaldo or Neymar. I don't think is going to make it. So they're looking at Morocco with do we go in? Do we win? Do we draw? Very apprehensive because they don't know what they expect from their team. And they do see that first game with Morocco really shaping the World Cup. And one of the things I mentioned is that whoever wins the group, they do have a chance in the round 32, but then the Netherlands may be waiting for that team after that. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely it's going to be difficult. But for me, where I kind of see Morocco's strength is that their squad depth, they have a lot of good youngsters coming through. And I think that's where, when you look at the World Cup, is that what does your bench give you, right? Yeah. And if you have a strong bench, you always have a better chance. And with that, what's Egypt's bench? Because we never spoke about their bench. What's their bench looking like?
Egypt's bench.
Yeah.
I actually think we've got some squad depth on all three lines, on all three fronts. I have to say, apart from yes, the striker position, I think our squad depth is good. But at the same time, there are some players that if you lose, it will be an issue. And like Marmoush, I don't think we could survive without him. And the same thing, I wouldn't say for Salah. I think Salah, honestly, at this point, is the team actually has managed to play very well without him, but I don't think it'd be able to play well without Marmoush. So I would say it's mainly Marmoush is the issue, but otherwise, I think we've got a decent squad depth.
So with that, let's talk about the chances. Where do you think Egypt will finish? Which round do you think they'll get to? Where do
Yeah.
you think they'll end up?
I think Egypt was very lucky with the draw in general. I think we were in a good group relative to the other groups. I think Iran is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and I think Iran, yes, can beat Egypt, and Egypt can beat Iran. But I think that realistically, with Iran, with everything that's happening around Iran, them not being able to stay in the U.S., flying the day of the game, and obviously everything surrounding them, this could either make them they can it can really motivate them to show their true colors and strength, and also they're very seasoned in the World Cup. They've been in the World Cup, this is like the third World Cup in a row for a lot of those players. They're also at the end of their generation. Most of their players are in their 30s. So I think that if Egypt manages to beat New Zealand, get a point from Belgium, get a point, or even beat Iran, that's kind of best case scenario. We might be second. And second, we play the second of the US's group, which is USA, Paraguay, Australia, Turkey. Could be any of those teams, honestly. I think all of them are tough teams for Egypt. But I think at the same time, when you're playing a knockout game, Egypt knows how to play knockout games in Africa, at least. We have, we're a defensive team. We stay behind the ball, and I think we know how to play that game, which helps in knockout games. So if you're playing against again the likes of Turkey or likes of the US is going to be tough on home soil, but still, I think you do have a chance to win that game and go make it to the round of 16. Round of 16, it probably will be Argentina. So I think this is where the run ends. But if you end first in the group, then you may actually make it all the way to the quarterfinals if you've had an amazing run. So my expectation and hope would be round of 16. Best case scenario would be quarterfinals.
I've been saying this with two guests that I've been speaking to that this is one of the first World Cups where I don't see a clear cut favorite there's two teams. Like when you even look at Argentina, Messi is 37, close to 40 than he is in his prime. And the rest of the team there, again, it's not like they were a few years in the last World Cup. A lot of them have got much more older. When you look at France has a very good attack, but their midfield and defense is a bit shaky. Then you look at, and I'm just going to go the favorite, Spain, has a good overall team. But again, you look at Yamal, who is coming off a hamstring injury. Is he going to be fully fit? And is he going to be able to drive the team? Then you look at, for me, Portugal for my favorite is Portugal because they have a very good age, other than Ronaldo being the oldest. And again, with Ronaldo, a lot of critics or cynics and that, but when it comes to games that matter, he will turn up, right? Because people can say what they want, like he's playing in the Saudi league, but at the end of the day, there was a trophy to be won against a super team of Al Ahly and Al Hilal, sorry, and he pulled through. So I'm not gonna sleep on that. And when you look at the midfield for PSG, Portugal, it is PSG, right? So you have Neves, Vitinha, and then you have Matheus Fernandes as a backup who had a really good season. And then up the pitch in the 10, you have Bruno Fernandes, and then you have Mendes at the left back. And they have a very good, and they usually have a very good goalkeeper. I'm forgetting names right now, but they have a very good chance. So for me, they're like the favorite, but even then, the caveat is going to be, do they have a finisher, right? Because you have Ronaldo as a striker. Then you go down to the other teams, and you go across every single team. Everybody has pros and cons. You look at England; they have a very good setup, but again, their striker's 34 now, 32. I forget his age, but he's getting on Harry Kane. does he, and especially with the team for England, do they have the legs considering after a long season? And then you have
Yep.
the same thing with players coming for you, Team USA. The challenge they have is they've had their coach for a year, Pochettino, and they are a young team, but is the World Cup too soon? So right now, it's like, I don't know, the story of God locked in the three bears. One's too hot, one's too cold. The team that's just right, we don't have that yet, or at least I don't have that yet. So that's why I think that any team has a chance. Because again, once you get to the knockout phases, you know, uh, anything can happen. So many different factors. You mentioned there are a lot of caveats that we may not be aware of. We already spoke about weather. We spoke about maybe emotional struggles. We talked about the physicality of the league. And then the other part is the pitches. And I've mentioned this before. I don't think the pitches here are the ball in some areas may not bounce the same way.
Yeah.
So anything can happen. So definitely interesting in that regards. So who's your pick for to win the World Cup?
I'm gonna go with England. I think it's
Oh
coming home.
wow,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Premier League, and I love, English team, and I think they're favorites because, like you said, there is no clear contender. Each team, yes, has its, pros and cons. I think France obviously is always a favorite. I mean, their squad is, unbelievable, especially up front. But the thing is, I think Deschamps has run his course, and I think that how they looked in the friendly, especially against Cote d'Ivoire, last week, that kind of gave me some thought. I think Argentina, they still do it. They were very decent yesterday against Iceland, and I think yes, they are always favorites. People talk about the Netherlands. I don't think they're there yet. Maybe I think Portugal is yes, their midfield, mainly. I think it's the best midfield in the whole competition. I think there's no midfield like that. But also, I don't think Portugal, like their coach, Roberto Martinez, his. I don't think his manager that could win a World Cup. I also don't think that they have that World Cup winning mentality. Or maybe they're not there yet. So I think England has a decent chance. You're right, the season was tough, but I think with Harry Kane being in the form that he's in, with Declan Rice, being how he is, anything can happen. I'm a Chelsea fan too. I wish I could see Cole Palmer. He had a terrible season, and I understand him not, being, called by Thomas Tuchel, but also I think he can change games. So we'll see. And I think a, a team that will not win the World Cup, but I think might have a very deep run and people are not thinking of, is Japan.
Oh yeah, good reminder. I actually was gonna say is that if you look at the recent teams that they played against in Europe, they're bad. Everybody, whether it's Germany, whether it's England, and I think I forgot the other team, but they are really good. The other thing, because I didn't mention to my other guests, is that technically those players across the pitch, all of them have like they fundamentally coach their players to be technically solid, right? Not just in terms of uh, what I would say the traditional techniques of how to kick a ball or how to pass a ball, but also in terms of ball control, close foot control, dribbling, and stuff like that. And then the way that the game that they played against England, was it 2 months ago in March, the goal that they scored, from a counter, actually it's called Palmer who made the mistake, right? So, and the way that they just sliced up England so precisely, I am absolutely with you there that Japan is definitely going to be a team to watch in this World Cup.
Yeah.
Um, would like to segue into the Egyptian league, because I think for many of the folks that's listening here, they have no idea about the Egyptian leagues, who are the
Yes.
teams in the Egyptian leagues. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about the league and the top teams, or
Yeah.
and a bit about them. Yeah.
So the Egyptian League is, it's a very also old tournament with a lot of traditions. Uh, been there for decades. Oldest league in Africa, and and Egypt, by the way, was the first African country to play in the World Cup in 1934. So again, lots of football heritage, lots of traditions there. Um, and so is the Egyptian league. It is again the best league in Africa, top league in Africa, no doubt about that. And there are three teams. So there are two teams typically that usually compete together. It's like Real Madrid and Barcelona. It's like those will be always be the two teams, Al Ahli and Al Zamalek. They're both in Cairo, and this is one of the fiercest derbies again in, I would say, in the Middle East, and again we could say among the best 10 world derbies, this is one of them. um, and then most recently there's the third team. It's called Pyramids FC. It was founded about 10 years ago or a little bit more than that, so it's kind of new. And this was founded with money from a Saudi investor who essentially wanted to found this club to rival Al Ahly. And this club really helped Egyptian football, I have to say. So they won the African Champions League last season. That club, Pyramids FC, and several of the Egyptian players in the national team are actually from that club. So now there are three clubs essentially competing for the league, and there are many clubs as well that make the league entertaining. I think Al Ahly. So Al Ahly is like Real Madrid. It won the most African Champions League, 11 times. It's won the Egyptian league 45 times, um, and Zamalek won it 15 times, and Pyramids never won it. So it's mainly those two. They have fan bases across all the Arab world. And we're talking, tens of millions of people for both teams. They're very famous. Hurting football.
Sometimes it's a factor of to do with how the team set up. So, for example, if you look at similar issue would be like Man City, right? They came out of nowhere, a lot of money, a lot of charges as well, but they had a very successful period. Now, when they first started coming into it, the joke about the stadium was called the Empty Had, right? Because
Yeah.
it was empty. But I would personally would put Chelsea in that bracket as well because they also kind of um, uh, uh,
Yeah.
like in the 80s, there was really no
Yes.
Chelsea fans, and then
Then
all of a
Roman
sudden
Abramovich.
Abramovich, and then
Yep.
there was Chelsea fans. So it does happen, but at the same time, there is a positive to that because it makes more it spreads the fan base out, right? So you have more fan base, and like you said, Pyramid FC kind of helps with the quality of overall of the league, and when you have more competition, just like the Premier League, the reason that it has so much eyes on it is because if you look at the last few years, it's yes, Man City won four in a row, but it wasn't a procession. There was competition, whether it
Yeah.
was with Liverpool, whether it was with Arsenal, whether before that was Man United. There was
Right.
always the title race, right? So
Right.
that always adds some flavor. And when you have a third party or a third wheel to that, it makes it far more interesting. And if you look at, for example, here with the NFL, I think that's one of the big reasons. There's even though the last 20 years, the AFC Championship games between the Chiefs or the Patriots has been almost a monopoly there. But generally speaking, the Super Bowl winners have always kind of been different, and that keeps it refresh and interesting. So I'll say in that regards, there hopefully with the domestic league, things will be growing in that regards.
No.
And if finally, do you want to touch upon obviously you being a Chelsea fan, you may be biased by Salah, but I did want to kind of touch on how was the overall reaction in terms of what did he mean to Egypt for him being a player that went to the Premier League and in the last 8 to 9 years has been basically the face of the Premier League and the dominant Premier League. What has that meant to the Egyptian people? Yeah, so if you can just give us your thoughts on that.
And hard to put into words. An absolute legend, an absolute icon. Um, I don't think we'll realize, the value of Salah until the next season starts and we see what it is not to have him, play in the Premier League or Liverpool anymore. I think that people still like they can't. It's hard to fathom the magnitude of what Salah has done, uh, and it's meant a lot. People are obsessed with him, rightly so. And I think he will change and already changed football in Egypt. I don't think there would be a Marmoush without Salah. And I also don't think there would be a Salah without Mido. I don't know if you know Mido, but he
I
was
remember you
kind of,
played for Spurs.
yeah, played for Spurs. And I think it's just the evolution of football in Egypt. It's like he set the path to show that yes, we can actually easily, not easily, but you know what I mean. It's like yes, we can compete and we can play and we can, win Premier League Golden Boot. Because I think we've got we have the skills, we have the talent. We're a big country, we love football, and so there's no reason not to. Except yes, we don't have the resources, but you can make it. And I think this was very important to demonstrate. I think I remember Salah's first season at Liverpool, his best season, or arguably, this and the last season. Um, I don't think I've ever had those feelings ever before or after. It was strange. I was, you know, every day I would wake up happy. It's like this is crazy. This is amazing. You know, and I want to like thank him for the feelings he gave me and others and millions of people. I think also Salah, his Salah is controversial in general, because some of the stances he took and some of the things he said. Even at Liverpool, he is, when he talks
Yeah.
about the manager. So he's done that with Egypt and different things. And I think this cost him a lot, be honest, because someone with his status and what he's done, we shouldn't really argue if he's the goat in Egyptian football, or we shouldn't argue if he's everybody's favorite player. But that argument is there. Is he actually Egypt's best player? And do people like him more than other players? Answer is no. Actually, people, yes, are obsessed with Salah, no, no, but if you truly talk to the fans and fans like me and fans who've seen, been watching football, Salah's not our favorite Egyptian player. Um,
Wow.
yes, he's not my favorite, but I think he's the best because of what he's done. I respect what he's done to the end of time. Like this is, again. But there's something about how you feel about the player, the connection that you have when you watch him, even outside of the field. Salah used to have that, and he really used to have this charisma, and he used to have this, where you would get drawn to him, especially again his first season when he was even in Roma, and then afterwards. But something changed in the way he not talks, but what he says, and he's been controversial to say the least.
So
Um,
would you say he's more arrogant, or is it what type of the resonate the what's causing that kind of like divide or that kind of friction? Because
yeah.
usually when someone comes across a bit arrogant, you're like, okay, yeah, we're done. Is
Yeah,
that what
I
it
think
is?
it. I think it's more of questioning where he stands in general when it comes to Egypt and Egyptians, and where he, does he see himself as, again, like who does he belong to, or where does he, like, where does he want to belong? Because he's always been, I don't want to get to know in too
Yeah.
detailed about this, but he's been, he would always give those mixed, signals and messages that he's more, British now, in his culture. Yeah, so I think, Salah is a little bit, controversial, in Egypt, and people feeling that he, you know sometimes doesn't want to belong to them, or sometimes says things that, that he gives them the impression that he does not care much about the fans or the fan base in Egypt. And I think yes, he doesn't listen to the noise, and I think that's what got him too far, that far, that he's, very driven. He's also very focused on his goals and his numbers, same way as Ronaldo. This mentality is like, he will never stop. Like he's gonna be like that. He's the kind of, player that when he retires is always gonna look like that. He's always gonna be, healthy. Like he's very, committed to everything that he does and respect that. But I also sometimes feel that uh, part of you being, a legend and a star is that you have to connect to your fans. And when you don't, um, people will will start to question whether or not, they question their feelings towards you, question their love for you. And this has already happened, with him.
Yeah, and one of the factors on this, I recall that there's a saying that the greater the player, the bigger the ego. And it's like no matter what they say in the press, no matter what they say in the media, it's about the team. It's about the team effort. There is a notion that it's going to be that they are looking at their stats. They're looking at what they're going to accomplish. Yes, team recognition helps, but the individual does play a big part. And if you look at the greats, right, it doesn't matter what sport, it doesn't matter what position, the greats always going to have that ego, and there's going to be something about themselves. And there is a kind of level of obsession that kind of goes into that, where they be kind of come aloof, they be kind of come a bit cold, because like when it's about the winning, is like to a certain degree they come disconnected from the fans, and the fans are, yes, I will sign some shirts and stuff like that, but it's not what drives them. And that's why they can come across very cold, or say things that are not with empathy. It's like you said, it's that mindset of me, right? And like you said, without that, they won't be the greats that they are. So whenever people talk about, like, the best of all time or the greatest of all time and stuff like that, I don't see someone who is a pass first in the team, like always passing and looking for other people and bringing other people into the game and being more of a captain. I don't see usually those type of players who are and resonates with the fans being that people person. There's always going to be some kind of a coldness to them. Like you hear about, like, Michael Jordan. There was a coldness. There was like ice in his veins. Is because it's about winning, right? And everything else is secondary. So, but one thing I didn't expect it to be that bad. I thought, like, there would be a fanfare, but it's very
Yeah,
interesting to see
I
that.
I think it's because there is, so there is a player called Abu Trika in Egypt, and I
Yeah,
think he's an exception to the rule that you mentioned. Like he's the one who, with all the assists, he's the one who's always with the fans, who is, with the biggest heart, and he's also an amazing player, and he would have easily dominated. I would say dominated, but he would have easily competed there in the Premier League. But he, like any other Egyptian players, chose not to. And I think that I think he's the one who's always compared with Salah, and like who is Egypt's best player ever. He was Egypt's goat, and also yes, also Abu Trika won Afcons and so forth, so it's different. And also played for Al Ahly with the huge fan base and won a lot of things for Al Ahly, so that changes a little. But I think um, he's closer to people's hearts than Salah. Some people, but I would say Salah is still viewed as the Egyptian pride. Like you think of him as like, I'm proud that this person is from my country and done what he's done, and it shows that my country is capable of doing those things. It's like people are proud of him as a representative of Egypt. Not necessarily that I love him, but it's more of like, yes, this is what Egypt can produce, and
yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of like you have the external favorite, which is Salah, and the internal favorite, I guess.
yeah, the trick, yeah,
Uh, you know, there's always the case in life, that's always the case in life as well, right? Because even
yeah,
if you look at your favorite food, right, may not be the same what everybody else likes. So you will say, "What's your favorite food?" "Oh, pizza," right? And then internally you might like something else that might like, I don't know, toast, cheese and toast, right? Because it's not as fancy as pizza,
yeah,
but it's just more
yeah,
socially acceptable, right? So even
yeah.
though
Social
I don't know.
excellence, I like that.
Maybe it's
Yes.
maybe it's mulkhia for you, or I don't know, but so, but yeah, so there's always a different dishes, so an option. So yeah, that's an eye opener, and it's good to know about that. And we've been speaking for a while now, and we probably have some stuff to do. So we will just wrap up. And before we go, is there any? Because I know one of the things is you're a doctor as well and a cardiologist. Do you have any tips for people to stay healthy out there?
Yes. So summer is coming. Okay. So I would say stay hydrated. One of the things that people, tend to not be so good at, and it really makes a difference. and stay active. The more active you are, the better. And yes, eat out, enjoy your food, but try to also have healthier options. The closer you are to a Mediterranean type of diet, the better. So if you do those three things, you're you're in good shape, hopefully.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much. And one thing, actually, speaking of the heart and being a fan, what is the relationship between the stress levels of the game
Oh,
and
of the game, yes, yeah,
when
yeah.
you're watching?
It's
Does that actually have an impact on the heart or not? Or
it may, if someone has serious heart disease and they're very involved, then it can actually. And there have been some reports of heart attacks related to football games during or after. Happens almost every major tournament. Yeah.